All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. Happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm Jay Croucher here with the Whale Capper, Drew Dinsick. Thanks, everyone, watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. Today, we're going to talk about the 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 15 of the 2021 draft class, and 4 of them involved this weekend, and how we think they each respectively impact lines. We're going to talk about the Eastern Conference in the NBA, with particularly the ripples post Steve Nash being mutually fired, basically. And then we're going to talk with Matt Dionier on the Breeders' Cup. But Drew, let's start off with the vaunted 2021 draft class and how these quarterbacks impact the line. And let's start with Justin Fields, who right now is the 28th ranked quarterback by PFF grade. That makes him the number 1 quarterback in this class by PFF grade this season.
Wow.
The Bears are 5-point dogs at home to the Dolphins. The total is 45.5, which is pretty high for a Bears game these days. But what have you seen from Fields so far, and how do you rate him relative to the competition?
Okay. So if you made me take one out of this class and say this guy is ultimately going to succeed at the NFL level, I think right now it has to be Fields, just based on the fact that he has been able to at least produce competent quarterback play with what is the worst cast of characters around any quarterback in the NFL through this point of the season. And it was an interesting strategic plan by the Bears to go this route, right? To just basically strip the whole place down to the studs and to say, Fields, like, we're going to put you in harm's way. We're going to give you the worst offensive line in football. We're going to give you virtually no one to throw the ball to. And if you can succeed, then we know you're the guy. And at least what he has shown to this point, while not grand success, he's not leading this team to the playoffs by any stretch of the imagination, but he is at least kind of operating at a relatively high level. And most of it is because his athleticism and his ability to kind of create plays out of nothing from a scramble has been sort of the key to surviving behind, again, the worst offensive line in football. So Fields, at least to me, is worth building around out of this crew of characters. But I think, the Bears now, they make a move at the trade deadline. They bring in a receiver in Claypool. That was pretty smart, in my opinion. I think did they overpay for him? 100% yes. Like, should they have tried to get him for a 3 instead of a 2? Of course. Should they at least have tried to get it for Ravens 2 instead of their own 2? Of course. But at the same time, they had to overpay for a wide receiver, in my opinion, largely so that they can get a true evaluation of Fields in terms of his development as a passer here. You don't want to invest all this time into developing him as a quarterback and then ultimately see, not have enough data at the end of the season to know that you really want to move forward building around this quarterback. So I thought that was a pretty low price to pay for that type of information. I think ultimately expecting that Fields continues to develop as a passer to complement what is a very successful running game is sort of the baseline expectation. The last kind of key point here, the NFL is changing. We've talked about this a ton, right? The way that the defenses are generally playing 2 high safeties, the cloud coverage has tacked into Fields' skill set being even more valuable. And so that's kind of the only thing that really gives me the confidence to suggest he will ultimately make it as a QB in this league.
Yeah, I think you touched on it with that last point, with playing 2 high safety more than any time in NFL history, with playing quarters, with basically incentivizing running more than ever before, making running more efficient than it's ever been in the NFL, with run efficiency catching up to passing efficiency. I think that Fields' skill set certainly is well married to that progression. And also now, like with Chase Claypool alongside Darnell Mooney, Khalil Herbert, even though he doesn't get used as much as he should, is one of the better running backs in the league. And now all of a sudden, this Bears offense is sneakily competent. We're going to hear a lot more about Justin Fields just kind of in the zeitgeist, because the past 3 weeks he's been the number 2 quarterback in fantasy, which just means he's going to get talked about a lot more because there is all that buzz. Look, I think the Bears, the rest of the season, I think they have a chance to really flirt with the last wildcard spot in the NFC. I don't have a great chance, but look, their schedule goes Miami, Detroit, at Atlanta, at the Jets, home to Green Bay, who can't defend the run at all. Like, if they go 3-2 in that stretch, and then they're 6-7, then they're lingering around. Won't bring up that they have to play Philadelphia and Buffalo after their bye, but I do think that they have a chance to make a bit of noise. And I think that Dolphins -5 is a little bit too rich. I don't think, firstly, losing Robert Quinn doesn't really matter.
Doesn't
matter. Maybe not. It might be a benefit. He was one of the worst ranked pass rushers by PFF grade. He wasn't giving them anything. Yeah, he was good last year, but he's not been good this year. And then Roquan Smith, that's a bigger loss. But at the same time, I think the perception of him is much inflated relative to his value. A lot of the perception comes because he gets a lot of tackles, which is not necessarily the single most valuable thing that a defensive player can do. So I think the Bears will be fine. They're like plus 1,500 to make the playoffs in the NFC. Wow. Still. I think that's a little bit too big. But do you think the line, do you think Bears +5 home to the Dolphins is worth a tickle?
Bears or pass, over or pass. I played some over here. I'm not regretting playing the over by any stretch of the imagination after the Chubb move yesterday, but certainly the Bears being the live offense in this game, getting us over 45.5 points is sort of the angle. In that same regard, keeping this to a one-score game is very, very realistic in my mind. They still have a cover corner who could match up decently well against Tyreek Hill. So this is probably a Waddle game more than a Hill game. But I think that ultimately this is a game that lands in the 47 to 49 range.
How much does Bradley Chubb move the line for the Dolphins? Half a point? Is he Bradley Chubb worth half a point?
Against this offensive line, I'll give you half a point.
Yeah.
But I have not really been overwhelmingly impressed with Chubb throughout his career to this point. I think the Dolphins sold reasonably high on him. I mean, the Broncos, sold reasonably high on him, but the Dolphins' backs were against the wall to get a pass rusher. So I that was a very neutral move in my mind.
Yeah, I think Bradley Chubb, I agree. He hasn't lived up to his draft capital or anything like that, nor even close. But I think he's probably worth more to the Dolphins than he would be for almost any other team, because the Dolphins have not been able to generate a pass rush with 4 for a long time now. Let's move on now to Trevor Lawrence, number 1 pick in the draft. He's minus 10,000 to go number 1 2 weeks before the draft, which is one of the great bets of all time still at minus 10,000. And he is a 1.5 point dog to the Las Vegas Raiders. Jags at home. Raiders continue to get a crazy amount of respect. This is, I think, the 3rd time where they've been maybe a surprising road favorite. They were 2.5 point favorites at Tennessee, lost that. They were 2 point favorites against the Saints, ended up getting destroyed in that one, and now they're 1.5 point favorites at the Jags. The Jags coming back from London, which doesn't help their cause. Also doesn't help their cause that apparently they're terrible now. Our swag. What have you seen from Lawrence so far? Certainly he's fallen off after what was a pretty encouraging first 3 weeks.
Yeah, the inconsistency is what scares you there. He showed you some lows last year that were easy to kind of compartmentalize and put up on the shelf and say that might have just been because of Urban Meyer and the way he was developed. But then you see them come out in a game like the Broncos game, and you think, if he is ultimately only going to give you the highs, which were not even really that impressive so far this season. The game against the Colts, the game against the Chargers was more of a team effort, I thought, than it was on a Lawrence performance, kind of characteristic. It's concerning because again, like the highs haven't been high enough and the lows have been too low. The median performance, the 32nd best quarterback by PFF grading is horrific. I mean, this guy was supposed to be a generational talent, and now you need him to make a generational leap in terms of improving performance in order to realize the capital that they spent on this guy. They continue to add wide receivers around him. They give Christian Kirk, an absolutely, insane contract to reset the market to bring him a weapon this offseason. Now they go out and trade draft capital, bring in Calvin Ridley. Like, they're trying hard to put the pieces around him to realize in this investment. But for whatever reason, through kind of mistakes in development and or just, the flashes he showed in college were more about quality of competition more so than his kind of inherent skill set. Then whatever the case is, he is trending bust, and it's sad because you want more good quarterback play in this league, particularly in the AFC South, which looked winnable for this Jags team. And the fact that the Jags are 2-6 after considering their otherwise relatively solid statistical performance this year is pretty depressing.
Yeah, I think the the highs that Lawrence has shown, and I go back to week 18 against the Colts last year, where he looked like the second coming of Dan Marino, but those just haven't been they just haven't been prevalent at all. He had a pretty good first 3 weeks this season, but since then it's just all short, intermediate stuff. There's no depth. He kind of has weapons. He has better weapons than last year now with Christian Kirk, Marvin Jones Jr. Zay Jones has been perfectly fine. He has Travis Etienne, who right now is looking like a top 6-7 running back in the entire league. And I think that next season, I mean, this might be Travis Etienne's team more than Trevor Lawrence's, but we'll see. Calvin Ridley obviously will make a bit of a difference as well. Are you still buying the Raiders -1.5-point favorites at the Jags?
No,
like Jacksonville in that spot.
I mean, this is Jags or pass again, but like, I mean, the travel spot is not great. You're coming home from London. You're playing a Raiders team that that has stayed in Florida to try to get right this week. A Raiders team that coming off of a horrific performance where everybody was sick apparently. But the idea that the Raiders are favored here, I don't get it. This Raiders team's not very good. They're not very talented. You look at how they're getting it done, and it's with with players that you kind of rate barely above replacement level. I don't understand it. I don't understand the market support for this team. I just have not been betting Raiders games because the prices don't make sense to me.
Yeah, it is baffling. I do think that last week was a little bit of an outlier in that they will go over midfield on offense in this game before there's 3 minutes 15 left in the fourth quarter. Like, that's not going to happen again. And also Devontae Adams, who was ill all week apparently and was a shell of himself. Like, Devontae Adams healthy just have those types of games, but at the same time, he would rather that they got over midfield before 3 minutes 15 left in the fourth quarter. So I think clearly as well, they have huge bottom falls out potential as well with Josh McDaniels, with now, the playoffs being basically a pipe dream at this point for the Raiders, even though their schedule isn't too difficult. Let's move on to Colts, Patriots. Mac Jones, who obviously was firmly in the mix for Offensive Rookie of the Year last year. I think he also was probably better last year, even than the perception of him. He got extremely unlucky with drops, with interception luck. By luck-adjusted EPA, he was a borderline top 10 quarterback in the NFL last year. I have no idea what the hell is happening this year. He's the 37th ranked quarterback by PFF grade, and there's only 38 quarterbacks who qualify for that. So he's basically been the worst quarterback in the NFL. And I've gone from thinking when Mac went down, and he wasn't great the first 3 weeks, but that was such a small sample. I thought that he would be worth around like 4 points over Bailey Zappi. And then Zappi shows that he's better than expected. And then I thought it was more like 3, 2.5, 2. Now I think there's no difference between them whatsoever with Mac Jones in this current state. I think Jones probably has more upside to get back to a above average level than Zappi, just because he's shown it last year and he still is a second-year quarterback. But I mean, the line is telling you that the market has given up on Mac Jones. The fact that they're only 5.5-point favorites over Sam Ehlinger, who couldn't do anything while putting a Colts team that is dreadful at the moment. What's going on with Mac Jones?
It's even more than that. The market bet against him. They bet on Sam Ehlinger. Yeah, this was 6. It moved to 5.5. So place is 5. Like that is very telling. I'm the buyback here. I like New England at the cheaper price. Yeah. Mac Jones has been awful, and quarterback development is fickle. He maybe had a little bit too much success when it really wasn't about him last year. It was more about the pieces around him. It was the running attack. It was the scheme. It was the offensive line. It was the incredible coaching. It was the defense, right? It was a team effort that really got New England in position for a playoff spot last year. And maybe Jones was kind of a little bit too confident in his contributions to that, when it was really just he was playing very game manager football. He wasn't really being asked to do a ton. And when he was asked to do stuff, it was largely catching other teams by surprise because they didn't really know he had those weapons, or he wasn't going to take those shots. And now coming into this season, after a full off season where they have kind of just malpractice on an organizational level, what the Patriots have done to him in terms of shattering his confidence, this may be hey, we got to tear him down so that he kind of redoubles his efforts to try to improve and kind of invest in himself in terms of development. That may be the end game here. But it hasn't worked so far, because his, the confidence shaking and the kind of saber rattling of kind of trying to get him going has just led to him making worse and worse decisions. And that's not really the intention here. If you're trying to get him to invest and become a better quarterback, I don't know why you play it this way. I don't know why you put Joe Judge and Matt Patricia in his ear in terms of the development combination. Belichick really playing with fire here, and the pulling him for Zappy at home in a primetime game against the Bears was weird. I'm hopeful that he bounces back here against an Indianapolis team that has huge issues, questions with the personnel on the defense side of the ball. And Sam Ehlinger, who it doesn't seem like Frank Reich really wanted to go to. So, this is if this wasn't an Indianapolis team that's kind of in shambles, then I would be more concerned that the Patriots are only laying 5.5.
Yeah, the one concern I would have is that the Patriots' run defense has been terrible all season. We saw what Chicago did to them just a week and a half ago. So that would be the concern, is that, Jonathan Taylor is still on the Colts, even though he's been a ghost and unsighted, and that offensive line has been bad. But I think that the Colts will be less punished for having Sam Ehlinger in this game, perhaps, than other games, just because they will try and run the ball, and they theoretically have an elite running back, even though he hasn't shown it. And I look forward to Mac Jones quarterbacking the Colts next season. Brand. Let's jump to Bills Jets. Bills are 13-point favorites at the 5-3 New York Jets, and Zach Wilson was definitely the story of the Jets game against the Patriots, with 3 interceptions, 2 of the most baffling ones you'll ever see. He had the Amari Cooper interception, except Zach Wilson is a quarterback. So you don't get that pass, and you try and throw it away, and then you throw a pick. If not for Sam Ehlinger, I would say that Zach Wilson is the worst quarterback in the NFL right now, and the numbers would back that up. But it's not just that. Just watching the way that he drifts in the pocket, he hangs around, he drifts out to his right, he invites the pressure for no reason. He just doesn't give up on plays the way he should, maybe more than any quarterback I can remember. Zach Wilson just refuses to give up on plays, and he's not Patrick Mahomes, so he can't do that. What are you saying from Wilson so far? And is he, of the 5 quarterbacks in the first round, including Trey Lance, is Wilson number 5 on your list right now?
Yeah, he's the guy that I would have the highest conviction you need to move on from, particularly because the Jets have invested so heavily in young players to put around him, and it's not working. And by all accounts, the players that they have put around him, both from just a talent standpoint and production standpoint, Breece Hall obviously out, but Hall has pop, Garrett Wilson has pop, Sauce Gardner is obviously a future star. Like, now you have a young nucleus that you need to build on quickly, and you have to do it with a cheap quarterback. And Zach Wilson does not look like the answer. Now, what do you do? That's a different question. You're not going to have quite high enough of a draft pick to get an obvious crack at one of the top guys in this year's class. So you've kind of put yourself in a little bit of a Colts situation here, where you may be kind of trying to bring in a retread, or just, kind of pray that Wilson continues to improve. But I think this is the one that I would be the most surprised if he ultimately can make a leap. He has not shown a ceiling high enough to warrant an expectation that he can do like what Josh Allen did, right? Like, there is still a chance that Lawrence goes from where he is now to what Josh Allen is. There's a chance, but I have not seen it with Wilson so far.
Yeah, I think Josh Allen has ruined the perception of so many quarterbacks, because now there's so many people who just expect that people can go on the Josh Allen path, not realizing that Allen is just a total historic outlier. Like, quarterbacks just don't do that. They're not as bad as Allen was his first 2 years and then just turn into Josh Allen in year 3. But I would not be feeling good about Zach Wilson. And I think they should be starting Flacco, because they can make the playoffs if they do. I guess you still have to see what you have in Zach Wilson, but yeah, I think the time is running out.
Yeah, Flacco may get, Wilson may ultimately get benched this year, which would kind of set up a nice opportunity. Once Geno Smith retires, Seattle can bring in Zach Wilson, and he can lead the team to more playoff situations. So nice little potential Geno Smith, Zach Wilson parallel in like 8 years.
Yeah, listen, Geno Smith's never retiring. He's immortal like Keanu Reeves. He will never die. All right, before we bring in Matt Bernier, it's a weekend of must-watch events on NBC and Peacock. It all begins with the Horses and the Breeders' Cup, Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Clemson Tigers taking on Notre Dame football in South Bend and capped off with Saturday Night Live. The action continues Sunday with the NASCAR Cup Series Championship at 3 p.m. and wraps up with my Titans battling the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football starting at 7 p.m. All of it on NBC and Peacock. All right, let's see if we've got Matt Bernier. All right, Matt, I think you're at Boston Airport. A bit of a shaky connection. So let's see how we do here. How are you?
Yeah, heaven on earth, Logan Airport. I mean, where else would you rather be on a Wednesday morning?
Outstanding. All right, let's jump straight into it. First race we want to talk about, the Juvenile Phillies Turf. Matt, what are you looking at here?
Yeah, look, a bit of a chaos race. 2-year-olds this time of year, they're babies. They're still figuring things out. The 11 G Laurie goes out for Graham Motion. He's won multiple Breeders' Cups. He's won a Kentucky Derby, a Dubai World Cup in the past. So the man knows what he's doing. In G Laurie, her debut, it didn't come back fast on the clock. But she looked really good winning down at Colonial in Virginia. She came back in a grade 1 up north of the border in Canada, and unfortunately the trip was just miserable. No pace. She's in boxed up amongst other horses. She never really had a chance to run. She's 12-1 on the line, and they're going to put blinkers on. They also pick up William Buick, who is the best rider in Europe. So I think there's no small feat, nothing to sneeze at there. Again, it's a bit of a chaos race. I don't want to get stuck into anything too short. I think G Laurie has as good a shot as anyone at double-digit odds.
I love that, man. That's a wild card pull. The juvenile turf race and getting a 12-1 early on Friday would be just awesome. So great look by you on G Laurie. On Saturday, kind of kicking off some of the high stakes stuff. Race number 5, we get the mile on the dirt track. It's a 3-year-olds and 3-year-olds and up, and an absolutely loaded field. Any kind of early leans here as you break this one down?
No, honestly, of the 2-mile races, Drew, I prefer the turf. The dirt mile is just kind of another chaos race where I wouldn't be surprised if any one of 6 or 7 won. I think you're going to be able to get good value in that spot, but I don't have a strong conviction about one horse over another. As far as the turf mile is concerned, a little bit later on in the card, everybody's going to be looking at Modern Games, who was so impressive for Charlie Appleby winning up at Woodbine a couple months ago. I like Annapolis, the horse that won the local prep for this race, the Coolmore Turf Mile. I like Keeneland. He's a 3-year-old. He took on Elders for the first time that day last month. And yeah, he had a perfect trip saving ground. And everybody wants to look at it and say, how could you possibly back a horse getting a perfect trip again? It's very unlikely. People are discrediting the fact that the pace completely melted down, and Annapolis is very close to it. I think he works out another similar trip here on Saturday afternoon. And you can't overlook Todd Pletcher, the way that he's gone over the past month and a half, 2 months. Pletcher has a number of live charges this weekend. I think Annapolis is as good as any of them, and he's 10-1 on the line.
Okay, Matt, let's close out with the big one, the classic, 5:40 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Who do you like here?
Look, it's not really a gambling race for me. I think it's more of a sporting event. And anybody that's listening to this that's not into horse racing, I don't hold that against you. But if you're looking to see a genuinely great performance from a great athlete, a horse called Flightline. He's only run 5 times in his life. But it's not being hyperbolic saying that his last run at Del Mar was probably as good as we've seen since Secretariat's Belmont in 1973. This horse is, no pun intended, a horse of a different color. He just does not breathe the same air that these other horses do. He's going to have to deal with life is good early on. He'll be 3-5, somewhere thereabouts, so probably not a great gambling opportunity, but purely from a spectator standpoint, all eyes. You got to pay attention to Flightline Saturday night.
Wow, that's interesting. It's actually Drew Dinsick was telling me that with his handicapping, he doesn't breathe the same air as others either. So that's the same terminology. All right. Any thoughts on the race, Drew?
I mean, I'm excited to see Flightline run. I think we all are. This would be it would be shocking to see the upset, but this is as amazing a champion as I've ever seen run on them. And I agree, the Pacific Classic and Del Mar was gives you chills as you watch it. None of the other horses kind of in the mix here, Epicenter, Taba, Hot Rod Charlie, none of them have impressed enough to think of them as realistic contenders. But I think Flightline probably goes off 2 to 5.
Yeah, I mean he's 3 to 5 on the line. I can't imagine him going over that. Some people are trying to draw up a scenario where he gets hooked in a pace stool with Life is Good and it compromises his chances. I mean, I don't really care. I haven't seen anything that would suggest the horse can't overcome something like that. And Life is Good doesn't want to go this far, in my opinion. So if you are absolutely hell-bent on playing the race, maybe it's a cold exacta of Flightline over Epicenter, who's an up-and-coming 3-year-old, or Flightline over Taba. But I don't think there's great value there. I think everybody and their brother is going to be looking at it the same way. So for me, it is more of a pass race. Just sit back and watch.
Okay. Matt, thank you for joining us. Where can people follow you?
Twitter, @Bernier_Matt. Friday, we are on USA starting at 3. And then on Saturday, we start at 1 o'clock on USA, and then we move over to NBC at 3.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, man. Thanks for joining us while you're in Boston. Say hello to my best friend, my 4th child, Marcus Smart, the Defensive Player of the Year. Take it easy and have fun out there.
We will, I guess.
Thanks, Matt. All right. Before we jump into Marcus Smart's conference, the East, download the Roto World app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. All right, Drew, let's talk about that Eastern Conference. Little turmoil, which is totally foreign to the Brooklyn Nets franchise. But they let go of Steve Nash, or anyway, he's not the coach anymore. It looks like Ime Udoka, for better or worse, will be the new coach of the Brooklyn Nets, which, forgetting everything else, I think basketball-wise should only help them after what Ime has shown, what he did show in Boston from a basketball perspective. Nash, it's funny with Steve Nash. I thought he coached an incredible series against Milwaukee 2 years ago when it went 7, when they lost because Durant had his toe on the line. I thought Nash pulled every right string in that series. He played it perfectly. And then ever since then, it's just been a disaster. The offense looks completely broken at the moment. How are you adjusting expectations of the Nets with likely Udoka at the helm?
Yeah, Nets going full villain. It was a surprise. Tough to cheer for this team. I don't know how the fans are going to react to this ultimately, but no, I think
Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving,
amazing. It's really amazing. As I look at their schedule, the bottom is not in for this Nets team, and it's not close. The month of November looks bad. They have a number of disadvantaged spots. They have a number of very challenging opponents. And on top of that, the fact that the entire world of basketball is going to be cheering against them, I don't think is going to kind of, you're not going to get the best out of these guys for the next month. However, there is a massive pivot point on their schedule that starts after they face the Boston Celtics on December 4th. Basically, that is sort of the end of the tough part of their schedule. And even if this team is like, let's say, what would they be, like 4-15 at that time? And like presumably like that would, they'd be 25 games in. So that would be like 5-20. Like they could actually be 5-20. That's not crazy. And at that point, then I think the bottom is finally going to come in on this team. Right now, the market is currently ranking the Nets kind of right in the middle. They're about the 14th power rated team right now, still 1.5 points better than an average team on a neutral court. That is, again, not close to the bottom. Like, we have a long way to go. And I think people are going to start to be like, oh, nope, Nets aren't going to make the playoffs. People are going to be, kind of exhaust all of the memes and the puns and the making jokes. And then from that December 4th point until about the middle end of January, they have a stretch of 20 games where I can realistically see them going about 18-2. And so I think there's going to be a big flip on this team from the beginning of December to the end of January. And I will be a buyer at that pivot point, assuming that that they haven't just completely torn the entire thing down, which is not an impossibility.
Yeah. Wow. Wild swings for the Brooklyn Nets. I think if they're 5-20, I don't think Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are both coming out for that 26th game. They'll be playing for the Phoenix Suns or something. I don't think they'll be around. But yeah, I still think this team has significant upside as well because they have pieces that they can trade. And if they're sure that Durant is actually sticking around, and Ime if he creates a new culture defensively and everything, then, they're one trade away from like a Miles Turner or whatever from being potentially an absolute force. Let's see what Joe Harris and Seth Curry look like as they get fully reintegrated. Simmons only has upside. He can't get worse than he is right now. So, yeah, I mean, I couldn't touch the Nets at plus 550 to win the East right now when the Bucks are plus 275. That gap needs to be much, much bigger. But let's quickly talk about the rest of the East before we wrap up. So Bucks are the favorite right now, jointly with the Celtics plus 275, then the Nets. Sixers plus 750, which I can't get involved in based on what that defense has looked like. And then the Cavs, who are the interesting one to me. I don't think I would bet on them at plus 1,000, but I don't think that's far off true price, which is surprising because I didn't think I would have them rated that highly preseason. But with what the Cavs have shown defensively, and the big thing there is Donovan Mitchell, who I actually think has a chance to win MVP. I think his MVP price is too long. He's a force on offense. And the whole thing with him is he said he spent the entire offseason working on his defense. And so far it's shown. Like he is a much better defensive player through this first couple weeks than he was in Utah. And if the Cavs get the number 1 seed and Mitchell is averaging like 30 a game, and there's this narrative about how he fixed his defense, and by getting the number 1 seed, you make it harder for guys like Giannis and Tatum to win MVP as well because you finished above them. I mean, I think Mitchell is live, and I think the Cavs are live to do some damage. Are you a Cleveland bandwagon?
I'm not, but you're making a strong case. Like tonight, for instance, against Boston, I made that game 3.5, and it's Boston -2. I make Boston the best team in the NBA, 7 points better than an average team on a neutral. I make Cleveland 2 points better than an average team on a neutral. I agree with you that their defense is rating well and is grading well, but the offense for the Cavs is a bigger question for me. Like I have Boston's offense 10 points better in a neutral game script. So they're going to have to prove it to me offensively, I think, for me to really come around on this team. But maybe we do live in an NBA now where effort and defense might be the distinguishing characteristic on a team in the East, which otherwise has a lot of questions. I mean, basically nobody in the East outside of Milwaukee and Boston is showing us anything. And I have questions about Milwaukee, frankly, because everybody else besides Giannis is on the downside of their aging curve. And, just in general, this little spark that you're seeing from the likes of the Brook Lopez's and even Drew Holiday, I don't 100% believe is sustainable. So concerned a little bit about everybody that's not Boston right now in the East. But 10-1 for the Cavs, if they ultimately can get a top 3 seed, that will be an interesting team.
Yeah, I believe in the Cavs. I believe in their offense. Right now, they got the 4th best offense in the NBA, and that's without Darius Garland playing, who is an offensive force, an all-star level player. So I think they can have a top 10 offense and a top 5 defense, which makes you a contender. So and also they haven't had an easy schedule. Like they've had to play at Toronto. They've had to play the Celtics already. They played, then it's teams like the Bulls, the Knicks, who are not terrible teams, obviously not the greatest either. But yeah, I think the Cavs are a team with pretty big upside. So we'll see how that goes. I believe in you, Donovan Mitchell, from 60-1 MVP, just because, they could be the 1 seed. They have that upside. Evan Mobley gives them significant amount of upside as well. All right. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick. We'll see you soon.